And maybe most importantly, that this action is changing YouTube's business model. That YouTube cannot bury its head in the sand. YouTube cannot pretend that it's not aware of the content on its platform and hope to escape liability for COPPA. YouTube is going to be explicitly held liable for complying with COPPA where it has actual knowledge of the content. YouTube is going to be required to seek out that actual knowledge through requiring content creators and channel owners to specifically designate whether they are directed to children. And as the chairman noted, not only can we sue Google and YouTube for compliance with COPPA, but also individual channel owners and content creators. And once this order has been fully implemented, we intend to conduct a sweep of the YouTube platform to determine whether there remains child-directed content on the platform with respect to which personally identifiable information continues to be collected. So, questions?
Yeah, I gotta have some questions because I've got Petey here who's completely freaking out. He thinks this is the end of the Primetime Treasure Hunter YouTube channel. I mean, this is not a kids channel. Occasionally we have a puppet appearance. Sometimes we have the Pink Panther on in the background, but you know, even the Pink Panther fully acknowledges in a disclaimer on his sign right there that this is not for kids. We are not targeting kids on the Primetime Treasure Hunter YouTube channel. So do I have anything to worry about? Does your YouTube channel have anything to worry about? And if you don't have a YouTube channel, do the YouTube channels you watch have something to worry about? You heard this gentleman right here. His name is Andrew Smith. He is the Bureau Director for the FTC, which, as you can see there, is the Federal Trade Commission. And you heard him refer to something called COPPA. Not copper as in the metal, but COPPA, C-O-P-P-A. It stands for the Children's Online Privacy and Protection Act, which is a law that was created in 1998 to protect and safeguard children from privacy concerns regarding the data that might be collected from them without parental consent when they are on some type of website. And basically what has happened is that YouTube, as you can see right over here in one of my little tabs, they were hit with a $170 million settlement over alleged YouTube violations of kids' privacy. And that led to the video which is where there was an announcement of the fine and of the settlement. And as a result, based on other things that were said in this press conference by Andrew Smith, which I will show you additional snippets of during this video, has really caused an uproar in the content creator community on YouTube, particularly in the toy network, the action figure network, and those two things are one and the same. The action figures being part of the toy network, obviously, but there's a lot of subgenres in the toy area. In addition to action figures, there's whole Lego communities that are built up, and there's other areas as well, such as video gaming, where we have this situation where there is content that can be considered as something that kids might like, yet there's people like me who are in their 40s who grew up with a lot of these toys who now are doing adult-based, mostly adult-focused videos that have to do with some of this nostalgia. Now, it might not be our primary focus, like on the Primetime Treasure Hunter YouTube channel. It's more general. We're doing treasure hunts, and we're going to estate sales and garage sales and rummage sales and flea markets, and we're finding things. But sometimes we talk about, action figures. I might talk about, a Skeletor figure that I found. A lot of my videos I have, Snake Mountain in the background, or Castle Grayskull, or I might talk about a Tasmanian Devil cup that I found, or mug, and what is it worth, or something like that. So kid type of content, something that a kid might technically be interested in, could be something that you could see not only on this channel but other reselling channels as well. And from what I've seen so far from a lot of these videos that are on, and that's just me just typing in COPPA right before I started up this video, and you could see the level of concern about this. It is mostly right now, or almost entirely, in the gaming / toy community, where there's a lot of these videos about a lot of concern about this. There's some other videos from some other folks, some legal scholars and stuff who've done some videos, some YouTube content creator folks, who focus on just creating just general kind of good YouTube content videos and how to improve your videos and stuff like that. So there's been different people who've covered it, but the majority have been from the toy and the action figure and the gaming community. And you could see here there's a lot of concern, like, will your favorite YouTube channel survive in 2020? And let's strike back against COPPA, and if the FTC doesn't change COPPA, our channel disappears. Is COPPA going to destroy YouTube? So I'm not saying that there's anything wrong per se about these videos. I'm not criticizing them or anything like that. In fact, they actually serve an important purpose, because without videos like this raising alarm and raising concerns, the issues regarding COPPA are not going to be fully fleshed out so that people are adequately protected. And my goal in doing this video is to clarify things for people in general, whether you're from a toy niche, a doll niche, a gaming niche, wherever, from Lego niche, wherever it is you're from the reselling community. I want to make sure that I clarify some things, because I first became aware of this several weeks ago, maybe even about a month ago, when I was preparing for my interview with Michael D. French from Retro Blasting. So many of you who are watching this know Michael very well. He is one of my favorite YouTubers. I have him on my side tab. I absolutely love his videos. And, when Michael's concerned about something, as he was with this topic, it's definitely something that raises alarms for me and raises concerns for me, because I have a lot of respect for Michael, and he's a very smart guy. And so it just caused me to really dive into it. Now, I told Michael, and when I interviewed him on my channel, I did tell him that this was something I was, wanted to get into more. I might even do a video about it, but I didn't want to jump immediately into it, because whenever I see all this concern about it, I want to make sure that I get as much facts as possible. So I have been just reading tons and tons of documents on this. I've been watching almost every video on YouTube that's been created up till, seriously, like a few hours ago. I've tried to get myself as up to date as possible. And so what I want to do is go over some of the history for you. And I'm going to show you how things are kind of playing out over time. It's a very dynamic situation, but it's something that you need to be concerned about. I definitely want to bring the attention of this issue to the reselling community, because one of the things that I talked about with Michael during the interview is that I feel that a lot of our channels are kind of segmented off into these different communities, and to some extent there's a logic to that and a reason to it, but I do think that we need to be connected more, so that the reselling community could network more effectively, to get the word out on certain things with the toy community, and vice versa. I think it's important to be connected more, and that we stick together when there's issues like this that come up, where we need to kind of brainstorm and figure out what's going on. But it's also important, if you're a consumer, we're all one big community, and there's no content being created if there's not people out there to consume it. So as a consumer, this is very important for you as well, because this is going to impact channels that are your favorite, channels that you like. There's going to be things that happen out of this, whether they're fear-based and not completely based in reality. It doesn't necessarily matter, because people are going to take action, largely because of the messaging that was provided through that video here that I just showed you. And again, I'll show you some other snippets of it a little bit later on. In fact, if you want to see some other information about this. I'll just give you another tease here of another snippet that's kind of got some people concerned and has led to videos with the types of titles that you've seen here. This is just another little example, and then we'll go into the history of COPPA, and I'll tell you what this all means in just a moment.
And if the FTC is bringing independent piecemeal actions against content creators for violating COPPA, that may discourage content creators from posting content on YouTube. So the analogy that I think of, imperfect, is the expression about shooting fish in a barrel. And YouTube is the barrel, and the content creators are the fish. And so...
Now, that really freaked a lot of people out. I mean, that is the one clip from the video that really left content creators feeling very vulnerable, especially given all the ambiguity surrounding COPPA. So I told you what COPPA stood for. Let me tell you a little bit about the history of it and how it really developed. If you remember, in the 1990s, if you were around then, and when the internet first came out, it was a whole new experience, and there were a lot of new waters that needed to be navigated. And one of the main concerns that people consistently have has to do with privacy. I mean, there's concerns about that in my own profession, in the healthcare profession. With the HIPAA privacy policies, and the same thing goes with online, in that people want businesses to have proper privacy policies that are disclosed so people know what's going on, and they don't want, particularly, and what the government does not want, is private information being taken from kids, again, without parental consent. And there used to be, it is now defunct, but there used to be a website called kidscom.com. It was this big, huge community. There were about 2 million users for it. I'll play a little clip here of it, but basically what happened in 1998 is that the FTC found that they were engaging in unfair and deceptive practices with regards to privacy information that was being collected. And as a result, the FTC wrote a letter about this. It's actually called the KidsCom letter. And then as a result of this, the whole law of COPPA came into place, which really put in place a lot of detailed information in terms of what websites really need to have in place to safeguard the private information regarding children. And this is the KidsCom, like a little snippet of the KidsCom website here.
KidsCom.com, where children can play smart, stay safe, and have fun. Play smart. Build a house filled with eco-friendly furniture or play fun educational games. Stay safe. Chat is monitored by adult guardians, and kids chat with pre-approved words or a phrase-only ultimate safe chat. Have fun.
So, if someone wrote in that chat, for example, my name is Mary Jane and I'm from St. Louis, Missouri, and, or something like that, and not only just on this website, but somewhere else, and this information is being collected from websites. I mean, this is the type of thing. Now, they might not have been able to do that necessarily on that site. They might have just been allowed to communicate with phrases on KidsCom. I don't know. I never used it, but this is the kind of concerns that were emerging with regards to type of data that was being collected. In addition to, like right here as an example, in Moby, there was basically a big fine, almost, you can see there $950,000, so almost $1 million fine regarding COPPA, because they were basically tracking children without parental consent. So kids were using this, this program or this app, and so the parents didn't know that their kids' information was being tracked on it. And so there have been a lot of companies that have been fined through COPPA. Some who you'd be pretty surprised about, like Mrs. Fields Cookies, for example. I mean, they had a COPPA fine because they were collecting information on their website with their cookie company and their pretzel company, in which they were, basically giving kids like little rewards when it was their birthday and saying, hey, you could stop by Mrs. Fields and you could get a free cookie. Well, guess what? What if mom and dad didn't know that Mrs. Fields was collecting your kid's birthday information? You might get upset about that. And so, as a result, this information got found out, and Mrs. Fields wound up getting a fine. Nowhere near what YouTube wound up getting, but they still did get a fine. I believe it was $100,000 fine. Hershey also, for the similar but not identical reasons, also received a fine, an $85,000 fine. And other companies as well, some you may recognize, also like Lisa Frank, American Popcorn Company, Girls Life, and of course YouTube. Now, how did YouTube get caught? And this is kind of interesting. You know, I always say you have to be careful what you share on social media, and you know, what you share that other people could view, whether you're emailing it to someone or whatever. But basically, how Google, which owns YouTube, and YouTube was trying to basically get around modifications and amendments to COPPA over time, because they do amend these rules over time. And basically, the magic age range was for defining children through COPPA was anyone who is 12 or under is considered a child. So 13 and above, you're okay. And so what YouTube decided to do to kind of get around any kind of concern that they might be doing anything regarding improper use of privacy information without parental consent is, if you remember, back when you signed up for a YouTube account, there was a little mark that you had to check off that said that you were 13 years or older. And if someone did that, that was considered acceptable, by YouTube, and they figured, okay, we're good, we're kind of covered. Well, they weren't really covered, because what they were doing is they were on the other end. They were actually finding out through partly talking and communicating with their some of their bigger content creators, like Hasbro, for example, and Mattel, for example. And they were, these big companies, they have their own ways independent of YouTube of doing market research on who's watching their videos, and they would directly say in their about sections that they would market to kids, let's say between 2 and 8 or between 2 and 11. They would literally say this on their channels, and then YouTube would take that information and they would present it in marketing demonstrations, and they literally would show in PowerPoint presentations that we are, the #1 website where kids go to watch videos who are between 2 and 9 or 2 and 12 or something like that. So on the one hand, they're having people check, this little form when they sign on, but on the other hand, they're going out and they're gathering that information, and they're also sharing it with other companies to basically charge high advertising rates so that people can then go and advertise on those channels where they want to reach kids. And that's really where the line was crossed for the FTC, because what happened was child advocacy groups got together and they actually filed a complaint with the Department of Justice. Now, the way things work with the Department of Justice is that if the Department of Justice does not respond to a complaint like this in 45 days, it automatically gets kicked back to the FTC, and the FTC can then decide if they want to go pursue action on the complaint, which is what they did. The FTC has always had a strong relationship with consumer advocacy groups, parent advocacy groups, and the like. So they went after YouTube and Google and really brought the hammer on them. And if you want to read the full complaint, I will link to this in the description section. You could read through it. It's very interesting in terms of how they really detail that YouTube had the knowledge. And this is an important concept that we're going to talk about with regards to channel creators a little later on, because not only is YouTube being held liable in this instance, but in the future, content creators like myself can technically be held liable for a fine up to $42,350. Now, I emphasize the word up to, and we're going to talk about how that's fine-tuned a little bit later. So you probably, if you're a smaller to medium-sized channel like myself, could I would say likely don't have a ton to worry about compared to if you're a multi-million-dollar company. Again, I'm going to get into that a little bit later and explain that. But this is the complaint right here, and it details how, in many examples, that YouTube had the knowledge that they really truly were marketing to children, and they, as a result, these content-based ads, charging a lot of money for it, and they were profiting a lot off of this. And so any kind of exploitation of children, the FTC is going to be all over that, whether it's something that has to do with, abuse or something, or, some really more vile type of exploitation versus something like this, which is, not as bad as like, child abuse or something like that, but it's still something they would consider exploitive. And so they go after it. So I'm going to play a few other clips here that just emphasize the seriousness of what is going on, because the main reactions to this have been to, sort of freak out about what's going on. And I don't really blame people who have freaked out about this, because again, if you watch this full video from beginning to end, like, I know I'm taking little bits and pieces out of context, but there's really, when you watch it, I mean, it is quite nerve-wracking if all you're hearing is this kind of information without any other type of context, especially, additional context that's come out since this video. But like, here's another example that, if you're a content creator and you're watching this, you're going to get a little bit nervous.
That the importance of this case for me, in addition to the historic penalty and the strong injunctive relief, is that we are holding a platform liable under COPPA for content posted by somebody else. That's a really big deal. And if you think about all the platforms out there in the world and the economic power that they wield and the amount of content that they host, this is game-changing.
It is game-changing. It is game-changing because once you set a precedent like this, where a company as big as Google and YouTube settles, and this was a settlement, by the way, settles for a fine of this magnitude, which blows away, by the way, any other prior type of COPPA violation. Like, you remember the other one that I showed you earlier by the one company, I think it was in Moby. That one was $950,000. We're talking $170 million. So that, is something that's going to raise a lot of eyebrows. So now, as part of the settlement with the FTC has basically made other types of arrangements with YouTube, and YouTube has also voluntarily decided to take some action on their own with regards to figuring out a better way to identify going forwards, how to identify videos and channels as designed as being directed towards children. And so there's a lot of things that they've done in that regard, and I'm going to go over some different criteria that they have used, but I'm also going to go into a couple additional clips that kind of are going to lead up to that. I want to talk a little bit more about the fines and some of the concerns about the fines, and then we'll get into some of these changes that you're going to see as a content creator on your channel. I'm going to show you actually what I'm going to do with my channel right here. I actually have it up. We're going to get to it in a couple of tabs, and we'll also talk about how this could affect you as a consumer of this type of content. But first, a couple other video clips just about some of the threats of fines and things like that.
And so I think that we would have strong penalties in future cases against content creators and channel owners as well, particularly when we would have a situation where the channel owner was specifically asked, "Are you child directed?" and the channel owner said no.
Okay, so what he's talking about there, and I wanted to play that because that gives a little segue into what is really going on right now, which is that what happened as a result of this is that YouTube decided to go in with an algorithm and to just go in and kind of search all of the videos on YouTube and assign to them whether or not they are child focused or child directed or have child content on them. Now, you could decide to go in and you could decide to override that, and you could say, well, you actually can't literally override it immediately. You have to request a manual review and basically give a justification as to why that's not the case. But it can be overridden, and there already are some content creators who have done that, and there have been examples shown of false identifications of things. But it really doesn't matter, actually, believe it or not, what YouTube designates, because ultimately what the FCC is going to do, and this was one of the things that was talked about in the beginning, is they are going to go in after YouTube has done what they've done, because the FTC doesn't really trust YouTube, especially after everything that I just described. And so the FTC is going to go in later on, and they are going to do what they refer to as a sweep. Now, whenever anyone is on the opposite side of a sweep, they're going to feel vulnerable, because they may feel like they are going to get accidentally swept up and that their channel is going to go away. So, this could be potentially devastating for people who have full-time careers making money through their YouTube channel. I mean, my YouTube channel is relatively new. I have over 500 videos, pretty much all related to reselling and treasure hunting and that sort of thing. And, I don't make a full-time income with my YouTube channel, but there are some people who have, millions of views or hundreds of thousands of, subscribers, and they really generate a large part of their income through their YouTube channel. So you might ask yourself, well, why don't those people just mark their channel as for kids, or mark their videos as for kids going forwards? Won't that solve the problem? Well, yes and no. It will solve the problem in the sense that you're now not going to be at risk of a COPPA violation, really, unless you mark yourself for children and then you start doing something bad in terms of marketing for children. But the presumption is that if you're going to take the step and say that your videos and your channel now is for children, that you're probably going to veer on being conservative with regards to not doing anything regarding unsavory marketing practices. But what's going to happen on YouTube's end, if you decide to mark your channel as for children or mark your videos as for children, is those videos are now going to be disabled from comments, because they don't want kids commenting in there and saying things like I said before. My name is Sally from Georgia, and she puts her address on there, and then some pedophile finds it and comes after him, or some marketing company scoops up the information and starts sending stuff to their home. Like, they don't want those types of things happening, so they would disable comments. So now you can't interact with your viewers, and interacting with all of you is one of my favorite things about the channel. Another favorite thing that I have about the channel is bringing in some supplementary income. There's a lot of work that goes behind making videos like this, especially one of this length. There's a lot of research that goes into it. And so it's nice if a little bit of advertisement revenue could come in, or if your fans give you a super chat here and there, those kind of things help. Well, all that stuff is going to be gone if you designate your video or your channel as kid directed. And so that's a major problem. It's going to disincentivize people from actually putting up those types of videos, kid friendly videos. So in an odd way, this can have basically a reciprocal effect, or kind of a backwards or paradoxical effect is probably the better word for what I'm looking for, in which there's going to be a lot of people who are just going to say, I don't want to take the risk, because they're going to hear about the $42,350 fine. They're going to say, I don't want to take the risk, even though, as I'm going to explain in a few minutes, I don't think the fine is really going to be that large. That's the maximum that it could be. But regardless, a lot of people are going to get freaked out about it. A lot of people have gotten freaked out about it and have decided not to engage on making certain types of videos that have to do with action figures or toys, or going to toy conventions and stuff like that, because they're worried it's going to come across as kid directed. And so there's a lot of people who are changing things based on that. So that's going to be gone. Notifications are going to go away. So if you subscribe to a channel, you're no longer going to get a notification if someone marks that content as kid directed. So there's just basically all the main ways that you could basically interact with the video would essentially be gone. Now there can still be ads that would run on there, but they would be contextual based ads, which pay a small fraction right now of what the content driven ads pay, which is based on that specific demographic and other type of targeting a specific type of niche audience, because you get more bang for your buck when you do that, and therefore the advertising rates will go up. So this is why people really feel kind of in this between this rock and a hard place situation. A lot of content creators right now, especially in the toy and gaming community, feel, okay, well, I could either risk a $42,000 fine per video, and so if you have thousands of videos, there's the concern that maybe I'm going to get hit with millions of dollars of fines for each offending video, or declare all of those videos that I work so hard on, hours and hours, days and days, or weeks and weeks, if you add them all up, to just declare them as kid directed, and now I've just lost all of my revenue. They're not going to come and search. My comments are going to go away, and people can't comment on them anymore. So this is why people feel stuck and they feel very frustrated. A lot of people feel betrayed by YouTube. They're very upset at the FTC and Mr. Smith right here. There's a lot of anger, and there's a lot of emotion going on regarding this right now. And again, for good reason, people are concerned. And, again, it's comments like I'm going to show you now that have people concerned. I mean, listen to this right here.
Is it safe to say if YouTube is informing channel creators that they need to be COPPA compliant, they go through the training, moving forward, content creators are more at risk than the actual platform at being fined?
Content creators are always at risk of being fined because they're and channel owners, because there we have a situation where we have a website or an online service that is directed to children. So there, in the general audience platform, we still have this knowledge requirement that we have to prove up. So there is, I think, in theory as well as practically speaking, generally a higher risk for channel owners and content creators who, after all, are creating this content. And
so you see, again, people watch this, YouTubers, content creators watch this, and they're really freaked out because there's no exceptions being made here in this. There's no exception in which this person is saying, listen, when I'm talking about content creators, I'm talking about giant companies like Hasbro or, Mattel or something like that. They're not saying that. They're not differentiating in any way between those big, $1 million companies versus, someone like myself who's doing this essentially as like a hobby on the side for fun. And maybe there will be something in my channel that, a kid would think is funny or interesting, like some of the things that I showed today. So these kind of things would, freak a lot of people out. So if you are a content creator, regardless of what niche you're in, this is my channel right here, you are going to see something flash all across the top. And it says there, and you might not be able to read it well, but it says, important. All creators are obligated to take action to comply with the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act and or other laws. Review your channel and video settings. And so, as you can see, you have several options right here that you can choose. You could choose, yes, set this channel as made for kids. I always upload content that's made for kids. Now, that is clearly not my channel. No, set this channel as not made for kids. I never upload content that is made for kids. Or I want to review the settings for every video. I am going to go right here and I am going to feel very comfortable setting my channel as not made for kids. And I am going to save that right there. And one of the reasons that I feel very confident, and I would advise when I say advise, this is just your friendly neighborhood primetime treasure hunter giving you primetime treasure hunter advice, okay? I am not a lawyer, I am not an attorney, but this is just, to me, a common sense suggestion. Go into your audience tab, and some of my viewers might find this interesting because I've never shown this before, and go take a screenshot right here before this may get taken away at some point, because this is good proof that you could use one day in a court of law if you ever do get a fine or something like that. That will show that your content is not targeted towards kids. As you can see here, the majority of my audience is 45 to 54 years old, 27%. So shout out to that demographic that is the main supporter of this channel. You can see there's a nice bell curve distribution there, but there is literally no one who watches my channel that's 13 to 17. And if there's no one that watches my channel from 13 to 17, there is no one watching my channel from 12 and under. So I highly recommend that you go in, you screenshot that, save it somewhere, and that will give you added confidence to check the box that you just saw me check. So now I'm going to go into a couple of other clips, couple of other clips right here. So this is what I want to talk to you about is what they're using to kind of decide whether or not this is a child-related website. And before I forget, I don't want to forget this because I know I said I would talk about that $42,000 fine. So it's up to, okay? So what they're going to do is they are, first of all, if they decide you are in violation, let's say you put up a video, they say, nope, you said it's not for kids and it really is. First of all, it's not automatic that they're going to jump to and instantly send you a bill for $42,000 and $42,350. That's not automatic that they're going to do that. I'm not saying that they won't do that to some people. I'm just saying that's not automatic. They may decide to send you a letter first, a warning, a cease and desist. You never know what is going to happen and how they're going to handle it. And probably their approach is going to differ depending on the size and the scope of the channel. But what they are going to do, this is out there, this has been discussed, is that they are going to use what they call, they'll use a multiplier and they'll use a formula in which they take into account the amount of revenue that your channel is generating based on any advertising that they felt was inappropriately directed towards kids without parental consent, where information was gathered without parental consent, and they will take that into consideration in terms of generating a fine. So your fine might very well wind up being $42 as opposed to $42,000. So, who knows? Again, there's a lot of things we do not know about this. It's still a dynamic situation, and my both life experience in dealing with governmental regulatory issues, which I could kind of touch on a little bit towards the end when we decide about what to do, and my own experience in my professional career is doing advocacy work and legal work, not as an attorney, but working on legal issues, working on drafting bills with attorneys and stuff like that. There's a lot of stuff regarding that we could talk about a little bit later on. That's relevant. That's relevant to this and kind of applies, and I'll touch on that towards the end. But I'm saying that just based on some of my experience. But let me touch base, go back to this right here where we talk a little bit about what is going to be considered regarding deciding if content is kid related and some stuff related to that topic. So here we go here.
If, however, you are a general audience platform like YouTube, you don't know what the content necessarily on your platform is. So under our rule and under the statute, you are only held liable if you have actual knowledge that the content is child-directed. So that's what we mean when we talk about strict liability for content creators, but a knowledge requirement for a general audience platform like YouTube.
Okay, and now I got another clip right here I want to show you.
You've referred multiple times to the sweep that the FTC will conduct on YouTube channels, and it's an important part of the enforcement of this order. Yet there are 23 million channels that upload a combined 500 hours of video every minute. So, given that amount of content, what kind of meaningful sweep can you conduct?
Well, I think that we have a variety of tools at our disposal to cull through those 23 million channels and in an expeditious way. I mean, this is the way that we generally enforce COPPA, is by actually reviewing content to determine if it's directed to children. We have a variety of factors in our rule that we consider when determining whether or not content is directed to children. And so that's the way we do business. It has been successful so far. I think that I have no doubt that it will be similarly successful with respect to YouTube, despite the large quantity of information on the platform.
Okay, so what they're saying there is that they are confident in their methods, and they are confident in being able to use their criteria in terms of deciding what type of channels are kid directed. Now, what I want to go back to is that original fine and that original complaint, which I'm going to link to below, in which there was this big fine leveled against YouTube for $170 million. And in that complaint, what the FTC does is they go through and they detail several examples of kid-directed channels that they lay out the facts on how YouTube knew that these were kid-directed channels. So if you're worried about whether or not you would be someone who has a channel that YouTube would be that the FTC would possibly consider as kid-directed or kid-focused, let me just show you some of the examples of what they actually used here. And I got to get over to another tab here. Hold on, bring that up. Here we go. So Barbie. The Barbie site. Now we're talking 7.9 million subscribers on that site. Okay? And that's Barbie after all. So, okay, so that makes sense. That's kind of logical, right? Then we've got the Cartoon Network. Okay? We're talking about 6.3 million subscribers there. Obviously, that's kid directed. Hasbro, we're talking 3 million subscribers. Obviously, kid directed. We got a toy company, DreamWorks TV, and I could scroll down and I could show you. I mean, you could see here we've got cartoons, and look at this. Here's another thing, okay? We have kids focused in the screenshots, okay? There is no video of mine that literally has children who are, people who you consider under 13 in the screenshots, okay? There's not a single video like that. So if you have things like that, that's something that I would definitely reconsider as something that could get flagged, okay? Here we go, Masha and the Bear. We've got 9 million subscribers here. Again, very obviously here, a kid-directed channel right here. I mean, after all, it's like a kid's kind of cartoon show. Here we've got another one right here, Bradley. I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce it. I'm sure someone will correct me. But here we have even not only kids, but we have babies in the screenshots. Okay, so that's another example. Cookie Swirl. So here's another one that's you could see a lot of these bold bright colors, and this is something people were concerned about. If you have bold bright colors, does that necessarily mean if you put them in your thumbnails that you're now going to be considered kid related? No, not in and of itself. That's not going to be the single factor that's going to decide things. That would be something they would factor in addition to a lot of other factors. Here's one where it's called Sandaroo Kids. It literally has kids in the title. And you also have to check the about section out, okay? So look at the about section of these places, and it actually says, it's for kids. It's parodies and skits for kids. Some will actually say a specific age range. So you have to look at that stuff as well, and be careful what you're putting in your about section. If you have in your about section right now, either as a reseller or someone on a toy channel, that your channel is great for kids of all ages or something like that, I would take that stuff out. Don't even put stuff like in there. Again, it's not legal advice. It's just what I would call common sense advice. Here's some other examples as well. Now, some people who are watching this from the toy community might, freak out a little bit because we've got someone here who has some type of, Star Wars Lego toy that's being put together. But again, this isn't really an adult who's putting this stuff together. These are kids who are doing this stuff. So again, if you're watching this and you're not noticing a strong association between these channels, because this is literally every single channel I am showing you here, we've got, I think, one more. This is literally every channel that was in the complaint that I'm showing you here. Mother Goose Club, you know, another example as well. I mean, very, very obvious. Hey Diddle Diddle, nursery rhymes, things like that. I mean, all this stuff, you know, the letters of the alphabet, teaching kids, you know, this kind of stuff. All that stuff, that's all obviously. And here's one more, Toy Scouter. You know, again, very obviously, you know, we're doing like, you know, little songs. We got Disney characters in here. You know, so now, yes, you may have an adult channel that focuses on Disney related items, and you might be worried that you're going to get caught up in this kind of stuff. And that's where there's a lot of gray area that still does need to be fleshed out. But this might give you a little feeling of relief to see that these are the types of channels. In fact, these are the channels that Google the FTC identified as being, you know, the kid-directed ones. So if your channel's not looking like these types of channels, that is something I would say is a check mark in the positive side. Again, recognizing that this is still a dynamic and fluid situation that they're going through. But and to prove to you how dynamic and fluid this is, it is 11/23, so November 23rd, and literally just yesterday, so November 22nd, you can see this is dated 2019, the FTC had to put out, well, I guess they didn't have to, but in a sense they kind of did. I mean, they were pressured by people in the you know, our fellow YouTubers, you know, putting out, you know, both informative videos and videos expressing concern about what's going on here. And you can see here they tried to definitely, if you read this, they tried to lay a lot of the anxiety. So it says, YouTube channel owners, is your content directed to children? Now, I promise you that if you read this letter and you compare it to the video that I just showed you, they have a very different tone to it. The video that I showed you really could scare you. Whereas this one here, I feel is more like a massage to kind of just relax you a little bit. Okay, and they literally say in here things like, you know, is your channel going to get taken down because and considered, you know, a child channel because it has, you know, bold colors in it? And they, you know, they talk about that. Again, no, not necessarily. Okay, but what they do talk about here is that there are a set of rules that are going to help guide and determine whether or not your content is child related. And they kind of give some thumbnails about it right here, and, you know, just some brief little, like, bullet points, I should say. But if you really want more further detail about it, and I'll link this too into the, in fact, I'll list both of these documents into the description section so you could access them more readily. This one here and the next one I'm going to show you, which is also, you know, important to see, because this gets more specific in terms of what's going to be looked at. And this is, by the way, something that has also contributed to freaking a lot of people out. So it says, you know, what are we going to do to determine whether or not, and, you know, it's kid directed, and it says you have to have at least two, so not just one. So it can't just be, hey, this guy's channel has bold thumbnails, so now it's kid related. They're not going to do that. Okay, at least two of the following. So they're going to look at subject matter, they're going to look at presentation, and they're going to look at interactivity. And that is how they are going to make determinations when they do the sweep. So let's talk about subject matter. So this is something that has really freaked people out. Okay, if subject matter is appealing to children, so kids jokes, music, kids games, video and computer games, children's TV shows or stars, cartoon characters, sports, stories, toys, children's books, fantasy, children's arts and crafts, pets, products primarily purchased or consumed by kids like snack foods or cereal. So just think about my channel. So does this mean, for example, that I can't put my Shih Tzu Daisy in my videos because she's a cute Shih Tzu that kids like to see when I put her on the channel when their parents are watching it or something like that? Or, you know, does this mean that I can't, you know, show PD anymore in any of the videos. Does it mean that? Does it mean that I can't show sports cards that I sourced or have a guest on that talks about sports cards in a live show? Does it mean that I can't have people on my channel to talk about music? Does it mean I can't talk about records and stuff like that, or video games? This is why the video game community is concerned, because they're worried, hey, what if I put up a video of me playing Halo, which is an adult game? Does this mean that some old bureaucrat somewhere is going to label my channel as for kids? So this is what's caused a lot of the uproar. And can we sit here and definitively give you an answer to that? No, we can't. And one of the things that YouTube is causing a lot of consternation with is that they pretty much caused this problem, and now it's falling on pretty much content creators largely going forward. I mean, YouTube's not completely absolved. It's not entirely on content creators, but it's been made very clear by the FTC that content creators, as I've shown you in these clips, that they can be held liable, and they can be fined. So, but this is why I go back to those types of channels that I was showing you earlier, because that's more what I think they're going after. Plus, you have to think, if they are going to try to recoup a big fine to pay for their agency, for example. I mean, that's what they use some of the money for when they do, and it's one of the things they actually talk about earlier on in the video. If you watch it, they talk about that this will actually help fund the department, the fine that they wound up getting from YouTube. So they want to collect that money. Now, they could sue me for $1 million all they want, but they're never going to get it because I don't have $1 million. So it doesn't make sense, really, if you think about it practically. You have to think of the practical application. Are they really going to go after someone like that? And plus, how is that going to look to the public? You have to consider that as well. They do factor that type of stuff in. It's easy to go after the big, and I'm putting this in quotes, the big mean corporation, the big bad corporation. It's easy to go after that, but it's a lot harder to go after some, person who's just putting together a YouTube channel as a hobby, or someone who's just really struggling trying to make ends meet, is excited that they found some plush stuffed animals at a garage sale for 25 cents and is showing how they flipped it for 20 bucks, and now the FTC is going to come down on that person with a $42,350 fine. I really don't think so. I mean, again, this is just, to me, common sense. Now, I will admit that the government does not always use common sense, and that's one of the problems. So sometimes they do overreach, and courts are striking down overreaches by the government all the time. Another thing that I should point out is that COPPA is a controversial law, and some people view COPPA as unconstitutional. So if this winds up going in a bad direction, in a direction we don't want it to go, in a direction where a lot of the YouTubers who are from the the toy community, the toy channels, and the gaming channels, where they're concerned, eventually there's going to be some kind of legal challenge to this. It's likely not going to be from an individual, because it's going to be very hard for an individual to fight the FTC, but there could be some type of class action lawsuit or something like that, depending on where it goes. If the FTC just sticks with going after big multi-million-dollar companies who could afford to pay that type of fine, that's a different type of situation, and I think people will be more understanding of that, and that's not going to cause a huge public uproar. In fact, they literally talk about that in this notice that they just put out yesterday, just about 12 hours ago, to the public and to content creators. But just want to show a couple other things here before we wrap up that has really freaked people out. Presentation, the language of the website. So just some things to be careful about, especially when we're in this dynamic phase where things are being worked out. So if you're using language that's simple enough to be understandable to children 12 or under, short, colorful descriptions, slang and pop culture phrases like kids only. Now, to me, that's more of an obvious thing to try to avoid, kids only, or, hey kids, or ask your parents. To me, that's on a different level than whatever. I mean, you could see a reseller, for example, might put up a video that says, person lowballed me on my designer shirt that I just bought. whatever. So that is the kind of thing that would be a ridiculous overreach for the FTC to go after. Free stuff, cool. I mean, some of this stuff is just silly to really have in there, unless it's combined with a lot of other factors that make it, again, very obvious that they're, blatantly, marketing and trying to exploit kids. Again, that's really what I think this is mainly designed for. Whether the website uses visual content appealing to children, so we talked about this already with the bold graphics, fast-moving graphics. If you watch the beginning of my video, there's fast-moving graphics. Okay, you all saw that. Now, does that mean the FTC is going to look at that and they're going to say that this is a kids-related channel? I mean, I don't think so. Technically, based on the vague description here, can they say that? I mean, technically, yes, but I don't think that that's something that they're going to do. Animated characters, I don't have anything like that, but would this technically count as an animated character showing Skeletor behind me? I don't know, but I have Pink Panther back there. He's an animated character, so this is where things get crazy. And in fact, they talk about use of host characters, so a character property used offline or in television, movies, or comic books. Now, that can include Spider-Man, or talking about I do a lot of talking about comic books. I don't have host characters in that are famous, except Petey. I know, but Petey, you're not famous yet. You're not famous. He thinks he's famous, so he still wants to say hi to everybody. But I don't know. Does having Petey again in the video, is this going to make it a kids-related one? So do I have to now ban you forever? I'm still going to keep you in, and I'm going to say you do not make this a kids-related channel. A lot of adults love you. That's right. So you're going to stick around for a little bit here and there. So now if I were to directly market Petey as a kids-related character in the channel and say, hey kids, hey boys and girls, here's Petey, he has a special thing he wants to say to you, and could you tell your mom and dad to send me a super chat? That's going to be more of a problem if you do something like that. So avoid doing stuff like that, obviously. The age of the models portrayed on the websites, again, I would avoid having, and this is why I do not, most of I have kids. I do not have my kids in my videos at all. I've just not done it for my own personal reasons, and also out of respect for my wife, who does not want that either. And Mrs. Primetime, she doesn't show up in the videos either, except occasionally a hand or a foot or something like that. But it's pretty much just me and the occasional little characters that I bring in here once in a while. Whether the advertising appears on the website is directed to children under 13. So audio content appearing to children, so simple or popular tunes or songs, cartoon voices, childlike noises, or sound effects. So, again, you could see where this could get so broad that it gets crazy. Interactive child-oriented activities and incentive, surveys, clubs, prizes. Now, I do giveaways. I have a giveaway coming up, by the way, and I'm still going to hold it when we hit 9,000 subscribers, which, by the way, if you're brand new, if you're outside the reselling community and you're watching this channel and you like the content, please check it out. You might find some of the stuff interesting, and give it a subscription, because then I can get to that giveaway faster for people. Anyway, homework help. We don't do any of that here. Contest games, pen pals, and you could see all the other stuff. So these are the types of things. But again, I'm going to keep going back to, hoping you remember these different, channels that I showed you here, because those are really more in the line of, I think, what they're looking for. That's not just my opinion. That's literally based on the actual complaint that the FTC put in place against YouTube, and made those sites examples of what they were looking at as kid-directed. So now that brings me to my last point in terms of what to do. And I have said that this press conference did cause a lot of anxiety. I do think going forwards, by the way, and this is some feedback from the FTC. I don't know if anyone from them is ever going to watch this, but if they do, I would definitely advise when you do a press conference like this to put some information out there that can help allay some of these anxieties. Like, you have to anticipate how your message is going to come across to the public, and you have to realize, if you're the FTC and you're dealing with content creators and you're just going to blanketly refer to content creators when in your complaint you're dealing with those major companies with millions of subscribers, and you say content creator, which is me. I'm a content creator, but I have, almost 9,000 subscribers, which is I'm like a little gnat compared to the Barbie channel, okay? As much as I hate to admit that, that's the fact. So, if there's a way to kind of segment that stuff out, which there should have been in this case, that would be something that would be important to do, because this, again, caused all of this uproar and all this anxiety. And I posit that this is really, a lot of this was avoidable if this would have been messaged better. But within this 47-minute video, there is one statement that I will pull out of here that is something that shows some sympathy or empathy towards content creators, which is this.
We're also concerned about the effect of this on the content creator community, and that's one reason why, one among many reasons why we have announced recently a review of the COPPA rule to look at this among several other issues under COPPA, not just the platform questions. So with respect to user experience.
Okay, so then he also talks about user experience, which he's concerned about too, and there are concerns about, like I said, about user experience. If you're a user of this, of YouTube, and you're not a content creator, you still should be concerned about this, because there are a lot of content creators, again, who are freaked out and are going to be altering their content as of January, which is when this really goes into full effect, and the FTC could start coming in and start doing their sweeps, and they could start doing enforcement. And so January is when you would expect to see a lot of these changes. Again, some of these changes, and some of the people ending their channels, some people who are removing big sections of their channel, lots of videos that they don't want to just demonetize, they just want to just get rid of them, take them down, because they're just worried. There are a lot of things that have already gone away and will continue to go away. That's one of the reasons I wanted to make this video, to try to reach out to as many people as possible to spread some of this information, which I feel could just try to be as comprehensive as possible about it, and maybe allay some of those anxieties. But in terms of what to do going forwards, that you can do both as a content creator and as a consumer, is you could go to the link that I am going to put below, and you could see here that the FTC is taking another look at the COPPA rule, and you can comment on it. So I just click right here, and it's going to load up where you could go and you could comment. So go in and put a comment. It's not going to take a long time. I would suggest, as somebody who has dealt with these issues before, and I'll take just a brief little step back and talk about how I deal with this stuff, sometimes on a regular basis and sometimes on a more intense basis. So as someone who works as a neuropsychologist, there are lots of things that can happen legally in the government that could affect me in the healthcare profession. And so I've been involved for a long time in terms of advocacy on behalf of my profession, and part of that advocacy also involves reaching out and meeting with assemblymen and senators, and working with attorneys to try to draft legislation to help fix problems when the government does overreach. And I won't go into a whole bunch of specifics in terms of some of the specific issues that I've worked on. Just generally like that, you could understand what I'm talking about. And I've had to do a lot of work on these types of issues. In fact, one issue related to that, a big government overreach in the state of New York, was actually why I became president of the New York State Association of Neuropsychology for 3.5 years. And ultimately, and it wasn't just my own work, it was work with a lot of other people who chipped in and helped out a lot and made big contributions, is that we ultimately wound up getting an onerous regulation to our profession overturned. And what was once taken away has now been given back. But it was a long fight, and it required making arguments to government officials in a way that explains to them how what they're doing if they overreach is going to affect the public. And I say that because if you're a content creator, or if you're a consumer, and if all you do is go in and say, well, this stinks, they're going to take away my favorite video, or if you say, well, this really stinks as a content creator because I'm going to lose all of my ad revenue and you're going to ruin my my YouTube career, they're really not going to care about that, even though I fully agree that that's an important and relevant issue, but they're not going to care about that. What they're going to care about is how this impacts the public. And so if you could say, guess what? Now, because there's so many people who feel that there's all these vague rules out there and they don't know necessarily what to do and how to label their content, now people are taking down family-friendly content, so that's not, as readily available, and people are putting up more inappropriate kind of adult-related content with swear words in it and violence, so that it clearly could be obviously seen as not kid-related. And if that's more of the content that starts coming onto YouTube in 2020, that's not good for anybody. That's not good for content creators, and that's not good for kids. And as someone who has, again, 2 kids who actively use YouTube, they like it, they like to go on it. They are over 13 now, but they were using it back when they were younger than that. And so, we don't want them having, easy access or more access to that type of information. So that's the type of argument that I would make. I would try to focus it on how this is affecting or how this can affect children. I do think mentioning the user experience is important, but focus more on how this is going to actually have a paradoxical effect on kids. And with that, I think that pretty much sums it up. I know this is a really long video, folks, and I do apologize for that, but hopefully maybe you watched it in bits or something like that. But there's just so much to go over, and I probably will do an update on this one day. I mean, I can't promise that, but most likely I will, given how significant the issue is and that it is dynamic and there's lots of updates that are going to happen. We're not entirely sure how this is going to be implemented. So if I feel like I have something important to add, and I feel like I'm up to speed on the issues, I definitely will make some type of follow-up video to this if that's the case. And if you have comments, please make sure you leave those down below, or any questions, anything like that. I'll be happy to respond and answer them. If you feel that this overview was helpful, please pass it on to any communities or any other YouTubers who you feel that this could be helpful to, and especially in the reselling community, please pass this around. I do want other resellers to be aware of this, because as far as I know, I have just not seen it discussed, and I do think other resellers need to be aware of it in case the government does go in and does overreach and does overstep, so people don't get caught up in this and wind up having some bad things happen to their channel and to themselves financially. But I do think ultimately this is going to work out ultimately better than some people think currently right now. But again, as I said earlier, a lot of the anxiety that was driven, that still is driven over this, is based on the type of messaging that was put out, and that response to that has been on YouTube is necessary, because that does help generate letters from the FTC like the one that I just went over. So anyway, that's about it. Remember, like the video if you enjoyed it. Make sure that you subscribe to the channel, especially if you're brand new. Give the channel a whirl. I've got lots of different playlists and stuff to look at. Come by my Facebook group, the Facebook Reselling Resource Center. That's how you can get in on entering the next giveaway that we have going on. There's actually going to be 2 things given away, and so it's a fun group. Over 13,000 people in there. And give me a follow over on Instagram. That's at prime_time_treasure. I'll see you back at the next video, everyone. Hopefully. Take care.